Welcome, everyone. I am here today to speak about dyslexia with the 2023 SPIN conference. I'm Jennifer Leoiki-Drino, and I am the mother of two children, one who has learning differences. I'm a parent empowerment coach, consultant, and advocate. I'm the private school representative with SEAC, the Special Education Advisory Council for the Department of Education, and I am a board member with HIDA and the Public Awareness Committee. And I am here today representing HIDA, which is the Hawaii International Dyslexia Association. We have a statewide mission, and we are located in Oahu. HIDA does presentations like this one today. We have other great presentations that are located on the HIDA website. You can go there and look at our YouTube channel. We also do in-person presentations. We do teacher and tutor trainings. So I would like you to take a second and memorize this code. I'll give you a few seconds. Don't write it down, just try to memorize it. Now try to use that code to read this sentence. I'll give you another few seconds to try to implement the code. So while you're trying to figure that out, that is what we do when we are reading. We have to implement the alphabet into a written sentence. So that code, when we put it into the sentence, says reading changes lives. I wonder how many of you got it. It's very challenging to do. So in that, there were 15 phonemes, and only 7 of them were part of the code. The rest of them were our regular alphabet. Yet I'm sure it was challenging for many of you to read that. That gives you an idea of what happens with a dyslexic student who the alphabet is just not automatic to them. So in order to read, we must be able to decode and translate print into speech. So I'm going to go over some myths about dyslexia. People feel that maybe it's a disease, or someone with dyslexia must have low intelligence, that they're lazy and have a bad attitude. I'll ask people, why do you think that they seem like they're lazy? And what people will normally say is, if you can't do the work, you just give up and you don't try, or you can't do the work even if you are trying. And so someone might misinterpret that as lack of motivation and lazy, when it really comes down to the student not being able to do it. It's not caused by poor vision. It's not uncommon. It's extremely common. 20% of the population is said to have some level of dyslexia. It can't be cured. And people believe, oh, it must only affect a student during school hours. And it affects you 24/7 in many different areas of your life. And it's not just simply seeing things backwards. So here's some facts about dyslexia. Someone with dyslexia can learn to read. They need to have a structured literacy approach and going through step-by-step multi-sensory process to learn to read. Many dyslexics are gifted. It can be identified before 3rd grade. You can do screenings as early as kindergarten to start to identify. You see it at all intelligence levels. Many dyslexics are average to above average in intelligence. It's seen in both boys and girls, in all ethnic groups, and all socioeconomic levels. And it is hereditary. So if a parent or other siblings are dyslexic, it's really important to pay attention for early signs so that a student can start getting help early on. But what happens a lot of times is when a student is diagnosed with dyslexia, a parent will start to say to themselves, kind of sounds like I did in school, or I have some of those traits. And a parent starts to realize that maybe they're dyslexic too, or grandparent or aunt or uncle. So it is really interesting when a family starts to identify. It is a language-based learning difference, And you see it as a cluster of symptoms in language skills. So it affects reading and spelling, writing, pronouncing words. And again, it doesn't go away at the end of the school day. You can have issues on the ball field or in a dance class, or having to remember your chores at home, or getting your homework turned in. All those parts of working memory and executive function are affected. So this is a kind of an interesting image here. You've got on the right, dyslexia is the most common learning difference that affects 15 to 20% of the population. And then over here on the left, it says 80% of the population believes that someone with dyslexia has low intelligence. Well, 80% of the population is judging you to have low intelligence off the bat, whether they say it or not. A child, an adult is picking up this, and they start to internalize it. And this is so dangerous, because then people start to feel like they must be stupid no matter how hard they work, no matter how successful they are. If they're being judged as that, they really start to internalize it. So it's something that's really important that we change that dialogue, that somebody with dyslexia does not necessarily have a low intelligence and can be extremely successful. So it is a neuroanatomical and neurochemical brain difference. And these brain scans are really interesting. So these are both brain scans of somebody reading. And you'll see here on the left, a neurotypical brain, when they're reading, it lights up in the speech, phoneme processing, and visual word fluency area. However, the dyslexic brain, when they're reading, only lights up in the speech area. So right off the bat, you can see that difference, and how challenging that would then be to actually be able to go through all the processes it takes to read the written word. So the brain differences is what causes somebody with dyslexia to have a challenging time with oral and written language. So this gives you an idea of the vast areas that dyslexia can affect somebody. Now, every dyslexic is different, so not all of these fit for each person, but there's overlap, and for some people, they'll have challenges in all these areas. So I'll just point out a few here, is getting ideas on paper. So there can be all of these incredible thoughts going on inside of their mind. They can't get it out. They can't get the words to come forth. If they're needing to write it, then there can be a shutdown because writing can be challenging. So now they're adding to, I have all these creative thoughts. I have to think of the right words, the right order. And now I need to put pencil to paper. I can't remember how to spell the word. I have to think about grammar. I have to think about spacing, and all these different areas can affect somebody. So we'll talk later a little bit about accommodations, but this is where an accommodation can be amazing. So if somebody at this point uses speech to text, they've just taken away so many parts of this. So they're now speaking their thoughts into some kind of an electronic device. And so they're not worrying any longer about spelling and writing. And it also, a lot of times, someone with dyslexia is incredibly verbal. And so just being able to express themselves verbally can be a game changer. Another area is sequencing. So anything with a sequence, phone numbers, the alphabet, learning the months of the year, days of the week, really can be challenging. But also math has lots of sequences in it. Learning a dance choreography is a sequence. Learning how to tie your shoes, all those things are sequences. So those are also important red flags to pay attention to. If you are noticing a bunch of these things happening, that might give you an idea that we might look a little deeper into what's going on, and could this be dyslexia? So we'll look at how dyslexia affects reading. So counting sounds and syllables. So a lot of times in school, they'll ask somebody to sound out a word and to clap the syllables. And they don't understand where that syllabication is going on and where the breaks are. And so that could be really challenging if someone doesn't work with them one-on-one to learn this. Confusing similar words. So the shapes are very similar of horse and house. And so they might just see that initial and just think that it's the opposite word. Leaving out little words. So when they're reading, not seeing the I's and the it's and the does, ats, things like that. And so they skip over them. And when you're learning to read, if you have a sentence that, you know, the dog was at the park, say, and they leave out all the little words in between, that greatly can change the meaning of the sentence. And so now you're affecting comprehension too. Now, some kids say when they're in high school, this can be a superpower because it helps them kind of just skim through. They skip all those little words and it really doesn't change the content. So maybe later on, it could be a benefit. Slow, laborious reading. They are sounding out every letter and they may not be sounding it out right. It can be extremely painful. You may see them moving their body around, trying to get their brain to line up while they're reading these words. You're hearing things like and doog, and they don't even know now what that word necessarily was, but they continue on reading. And so by the end of the sentence, again, there's no comprehension of what they read. And what's also really common is they'll read a word at the beginning of the sentence and the same word may show up at the end. And it's like they've never seen the word before. So it's not going into that working memory. So with all that, as I had said, comprehension can also be quite challenging. In terms of writing, you'll see a student that will be able to, you know, somehow memorize the spelling words for a spelling test and then not be able to use them again the next week. It's like all that information is just gone. Handwriting can be extremely challenging if you're trying to think about all the things that I had mentioned about what you're going to write, how to spell it, the challenges with remembering grammar and all that. Now there's not energy to go into the handwriting. And sometimes there's a crossover with dysgraphia too. So as we said earlier, getting those good ideas out, the right order to do it in, a lot of times having a sentence starter or being able to brainstorm ahead of time can really help get the ideas going before they actually write it on paper or even using speech to text. So in math, I mentioned sequencing. So again, you see all these areas of sequencing in math, whether it's the learning time or what's the right order of steps in a math problem. You'll see sign confusion, number reversals, how to organize a math problem, aligning the numbers. Graph paper can be really helpful here. Another thing really important to remember, if you're expecting a student to copy a math problem from the board onto paper, there is so many chances of error happening before they ever even start working on the problem. So they may confuse the sign, they may reverse the numbers, they may not align them correctly. And so really important to give them the math problems already written on a paper where they're just having to show that they know how to do the problem. We have to always remember, what is it that we're trying to see what they know? Are we trying to see, do they know how to copy a problem? Or we want to know, do they know how to do the math problem? Really important. And then again, making those calculation errors, getting things kind of confused in their brain. And then when it comes out in a different way than what they're even seeing. They may have it right, but it doesn't come out that way when they write it down. So in spoken language, as you know, a common thing that people do know about dyslexia is learning the alphabet is extremely challenging. But so are things like nursery rhymes. They don't hear or understand the rhyme. So, you know, they may not be interested at all in a Dr. Seuss book, or you ask them what rhymes with cat and they cannot come up with it. And you may say bat and it doesn't really stick. So an important area to work with them on. Following oral directions. because of that processing speed and working memory, they may be only able to take one oral direction at a time. And if you start overloading them with 2 or 3, they may all get confused. Maybe none of them happen. They just get bogged down and they don't even know where to start. So important to just give simple bulleted directions. And you can, when they're younger, you can make like a list, but with pictures. So they need to brush their teeth, they need to get dressed, they need to get their shoes, and you could have a picture of a toothbrush, a shirt, and their shoes, and they use that as a checklist. When they get older, you may give them a checklist of written directions. So if learning their first language is challenging, learning a second language will be that much more challenging because it'll be the same thing, but now they've got 2 languages to deal with. So something really important to look at. Pronouncing words. When they're little, a lot of times you might think, oh, this is kind of just cute, and not realizing that this might be a red flag. So instead of like saying electricity, they may say electricity. And so important to pay attention. Again, if you're seeing a list of different red flags that you're hearing here today, important to dive a little deeper in what's going on. And real common. So they've got the word, it's right there. They're saying, it's right here. I can't get it out. And I'm so frustrated. I know the word. This is another really common thing that can happen. And also expressing their ideas clearly. So along with dyslexia, you'll see a lot of coexisting factors. You may see dyscalculia, which is in math, dysgraphia, which is writing, auditory processing disorder. You may see sensory processing issues, ADHD. Sometimes someone with dyslexia can look like they are ADHD because they look unfocused or they're having trouble with executive functioning, but it may be that they are not being able to access the knowledge and they're not being able to get their work done. So they're getting off task, either out of frustration or trying to keep it off that they don't know what they're doing, just so that nobody recognizes that. You may see autism spectrum disorder, anxiety, and depression. So again, why would you see anxiety and depression? Well, if a student is unsure if they're going to be able to do the work, they're starting to feel like a failure, they don't have access to the knowledge the same way other students do, they start to internalize all of this. They go to school, am I going to be called to read on and I won't be able to? What are we going to do today? So being able to have the schedule ahead of time, seeing what's expected of them, if there is going to be a lot of directions, that they see the directions ahead of time, if they're sent home to mom and dad to go over with them. And then here, you can see other areas that could be challenges or strengths. A few I'd like to point out are 3 to 5 times they're working harder and putting out more energy to complete the same task. So if you're working 3 to 5 times harder than somebody else, what are you like at the end of the school day? And now, if what looks like maybe a half an hour of homework for other students, this may be taking them 2 to 2.5 hours, and they are already exhausted. So what can we do to support them in this area and to recognize this? Because these kids need time, downtime, they need time to develop their strengths and things that they feel good about. Another 3 to 5 year area is executive functioning. So they're usually 3 to 5 years behind in executive functioning. So what does this look like? If you have a 10-year-old and you're expecting them to do this list of tasks every day, now you have a 10-year-old that has executive functioning issues. And if you were to subtract 3 to 5 years off of their biological age, and so say you have a 5-6-year-old in executive functioning, would you expect them to be able to do the same tasks? And this is like really important for parents and teachers to recognize, because we can get really frustrated. Why can't they do this? They're 10 years old. They should be able to do all these things. But if you think about this, it also lowers your own frustration and expectations. And then you can scaffold things for them. You may have to take some things off of their plate, just ways to work with them that they can be successful and that you're not so frustrated. So in terms of best practices, it is really important to work from a team approach so that everybody comes together and everybody's on the same page. They understand all aspects of the child, how they are in different environments, and that you all are going to use the same language, same accommodations, same expectations. But what I want to point out that a lot of times gets skipped is a mentor. And a mentor can be life-changing. So for my own child in 4th grade, she was matched with a high school mentor who was a student with dyslexia. And before this, my daughter was really didn't want anybody to know she was dyslexic. She was embarrassed by it. She felt really down on herself. And after just the first meeting, she came home and she was just so happy to see that there was another student that was successful, yes, was still struggling in school, had friends, was on different sports teams, danced hula, had what looked like an incredible life and was. And it made her realize that she had hope that, yes, things would be challenging, but that she could develop her own strengths and be successful in school. So she went on from that to tell her class she was dyslexic in 4th grade to in 5th grade. She had her mentor and her learning specialist work with her to create a presentation to tell her entire 5th grade what it meant to be dyslexic. And that was really important for all the students because many of us feel different. And it told the other students, wow, I'm not the only one who felt different. And kids came up to her after and said that they were ADHD or had other challenges. And then she went on to do her 5th grade capstone on dyslexia, which she was then able to share with all her teachers in middle school to help them understand who she was as a student. So I can't say enough about mentorship. So again, really important that we see a child in all aspects of who they are, that we're not just looking at academics and remediation, but we're looking at their socially and emotionally and behavior. We are looking at where their strengths are and how we can help build their strengths. We don't want to spend all their time in remediation because then they don't have time to build the areas that they are going to be successful in. So we need to build those areas that build confidence. We need to find explicit learning strategies from structured literacy to somebody that can teach them in math in a way that they learn best. And we want to do this based on their strengths. So how do they learn? Looking at those specific ways and then teaching them to self-advocate. As a parent, we start off advocating for them, but it's really important that we always bring them into the conversation so that they know who they are. And so as they go through their elementary years, maybe they say some of the things to the teachers of how they learn. By middle school, that maybe the parents taking the back seat some and they're advocating more and more each year. And then by high school, you're hoping that they're really advocating and you're the cheerleader in the background. This is a process. We can't expect them just to be able to self-advocate. We have to show them the steps, give them a voice, and have the people on the other end hear what they have to say. So again, learning your self-awareness and being able to self-advocate and then building those strengths from there. So when my daughter was in preschool and kindergarten, she wanted to dance. She loved to dance. She loved to go to dance class, but she didn't want to perform in front of people. And so when it came time for the little recitals, she absolutely, I'm not doing this. And instead of making her go and cry through this, we decided, you know what, this is about her. This is her journey, her process, and however she wants to do it, that's what's important. Yeah, as a parent, you want to see it. You want to celebrate them. But if that's not where they're at, their strengths are about them. So she continued on, and we really didn't see her perform. And then in middle school, she did a virtual musical theater production, and she didn't want to be recorded in the production. So again, we told her, that's your choice. This is your journey. And then the next year, there was another musical theater production, and she wanted to perform, and she loved it. And then last year, she was in Newsies and just embraced performing 100%. And her dream is to now be on Broadway. So you have to trust them and trust their journey and what's right for them, and just breathe fire into their passions. So we'll talk a little bit about accommodations. Of course, there's formal accommodations with your IEP and your 504 plan, and they may get things like extended time or a note taker, and these things all have to be provided. But at other times, it's important to create an informal plan. What is the parent and the student seeing that the student needs to be done differently? So they're exhausted at the end of the day. Do they need to be doing every math problem, or could they just be doing the odd numbers to show that they understand it? If the spelling tests are really not getting them very far because they're not remembering how to spell the words a week later, could they be doing half the spelling words and really learning those words in a multisensory way, where how they learn best? You know, maybe they're taking time and they're spelling their words in shaving cream or in sand, and they're spelling them in the air, and they're sounding out each letter. They're really doing a kinesthetic approach to learning their spelling words and taking those time doing it with just maybe half of the words. So are they getting speech to text or access to audiobooks? Are they getting the directions ahead of time? These could all be informal accommodations. So a lot of times people have issues with accommodations. They think it's giving somebody an unfair advantage, but really it's the exact opposite. It is leveling the playing field. And I love this image. So you see equality where everybody's given the same thing. And is equality really working for this guy in purple? It's not. He can't reach the knowledge. Yet with equity, when you give people what they need to succeed, he's able to reach the books in the same way everybody else is. So it's really important to change this idea that accommodations is giving an unfair advantage to know really it's making things fair. We wouldn't ask a student that wears glasses to come into the classroom and take their glasses off. We would never do that. And so this is the same way with somebody that needs accommodations for neurodiversity. So here's some great assistive technology. You've got speech to text, which can just really help with writing. You've got text to speech, which you can use that for a student having to read directions. So they have a math test and they're given a PDF. It could be put into text to speech. The math directions are read to them, so they're not making a mistake in the reading. Using Grammarly, spell check, having a calculator. Learning math facts can be extremely challenging. And so if you're in more advanced math and you want to see that they know how to do algebra, you might let them use a calculator. Audiobooks, we don't want them to miss out on all the wonderful stories that are out there. And so having access to audiobooks is helping their vocabulary, helping them learn content. There's things like note-taking pens that can record the lecture, and then it can be downloaded into a device. Again, recording lectures, having photos of the assignments, not expecting them to write down the assignments from the board. They may not even be able to read them when they get them home. And then also having assignment trackers. So this is a great advocacy card, and you can download it from the HIDA website. It talks about on the front about understanding yourself and ways to advocate. And on the back, it tells different laws that are there to protect students with diagnosis. And the Oregon branch of the International Dyslexia Association came up with this great self-advocacy card. And on the front of this card, you can write down your challenges. I'm dyslexic, I have dyscalculia, whatever it is. And then on the back, you can check off all the accommodations that you have access to. And so this can be a great way, especially for an older student at the beginning of the year, to start a conversation with a new teacher, to go and say, I'd like you to see this card and I want to know if we could set up a time to talk about it in more detail. Another great way to use it is with a substitute teacher. They carry them in their backpack, they see a substitute in the classroom, and they hand it over to them. And this can just save them from a great amount of embarrassment or pain. A substitute doesn't realize that a student's dyslexic, and they ask them to read out loud, or they ask them to stay in during recess because they didn't get their work done, when that is not something that would normally happen. So that can prevent all these things from happening. Again, you can also download this card from the HIDA website. And the Oregon branch also created this slogan that you are not alone, and just helping students realize, they're sitting there feeling like they are the only one in their classroom that is going through these challenges. And if you think that 20% of the population has dyslexia, that's most likely not the case, but they don't know, they don't talk about this with each other. So it's really important for them to understand that they are not the only one. And so we have also created these bracelets. And so if you have a student or a child that you think would like to receive one of these, you can reach out and email info@HIDA, and we will send them a free wristband with a little note, letting them know that they're not alone. So as we said, it doesn't go away. With the right support and instruction, people with dyslexia can discover their talents and develop into amazing people. They can offer great things to our society, and we need out-of-the-box thinkers. We need these incredible problem solvers. They see things differently. They see different answers to problems than the neurotypical brain. And so we need to support them so that they get through school feeling confident, feeling secure in who they are. So again, remembering that somebody with dyslexia, their brain just thinks differently. It's not that something's wrong with it. We need to connect their strengths to their struggles, teach them in a way that they can succeed, help them understand the areas that they have challenges in, but that there are other areas that they are incredible, and that they work harder than other students. And this is important to acknowledge, and that they develop incredible work ethic so they can be great students once they have access to the knowledge, and great employees later in life. So this is just a fun image of some famous people with dyslexia that you may recognize some of them, but they're in all different walks of life. They're not just actors and actresses. You've got Jack Horner, an amazing paleontologist, a molecular biologist, chefs, journalists. But what's important to remember is we don't have to be famous to be successful. So we want to nourish and nurture whatever it is that our child is aiming to go for, and give them the right tools to get there. And they can be successful in the way that they dream of being. There's some other great resources, other websites that I highly recommend looking at to get more information. These are some of the different webinars that we have on the HIDA YouTube channel. Please go and look at all these places to gain more information. And again, you can sign up for the HIDA newsletter to find out more information. And we love when people offer donations to put on webinars like this and others on our YouTube channel. And these are different ways to contact HIDA. And once again, my name is Jennifer Leoiki-Drino with Coaching for Ohana. And please feel free to reach out to me for any consultation or just a quick chat. I'm always happy to speak with people. Thank you so much for spending this time with me.